Chapter 16 of Moods by Louisa May Alcott. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Laura Riley. Moods by Louisa May Alcott. Chapter 16 In the Twilight. If Sylvia needed another trial to make that hard week harder, it soon came to her in the knowledge that Warwick watched her. She well knew why, and vainly endeavored to conceal from him that which she had succeeded in concealing entirely from others. But he possessed the key to her variable moods. He alone knew that now painful forethought, not caprice, dictated many of her seeming whims, and ruled her simplest action. To others she appeared busy, gay, and full of interest in all about her. To him the industry was a preventive of forbidden thoughts, the gaiety a daily endeavor to forget, the interest an anxiety concerning the looks and words of her companions, because she must guard her own. Sylvia felt something like terror in the presence of this penetrating eye, this daring will, for the vigilance was unflagging and unobtrusive, and with all her efforts she could not read his heart as she felt her own was being read. Adam could act no part, but bent on learning the truth for the sake of all, he surmounted the dangers of the situation by no artifice, no rash indulgence, but by simply shunning solitary interviews with Sylvia as carefully as the courtesy due his hostess would allow. In walks and drives and general conversation he bore his part, surprising and delighting those who knew him best by the genial change which seemed to have softened his rugged nature. But the instant the family group fell apart, and Moor's devotion to his cousin left Sylvia, Warwick was away into the wood or out upon the sea, lingering there till some meal, some appointed pleasure, or the evening lamp brought all together. Sylvia understood this, and loved him for it even while she longed to have it otherwise. But Moor reproached him for his desertion, doubly felt since the gentler acquirements made him dearer to his friend. Hating all disguises, Warwick found it hard to withhold the fact which was not his own to give, and sparing no blame himself, answered Moor's playful complaint with a sad sincerity that freed him from all further pleadings. "Geoffrey, I have a heavy heart which even you cannot heal. Leave it to time, and let me come and go as of old, enjoying the social hour when I may, flying to solitude when I must." Much as Sylvia had longed to see these friends, she counted the hours of their stay, for the presence of one was a daily disquieting, because spirits would often flag, conversation fail, and an utter weariness creep over her when she could least account for or yield to it. More than once during that week she longed to lay her head on Faith's kind bosom and ask help. Deep as was her husband's love, it did not possess the soothing power of a woman's sympathy, and though it cradled her as tenderly as if she had been a child, Faith's compassion would have been like motherly arms to fold and foster. But friendly as they soon became, frank as was Faith's regard for Sylvia, earnest as was Sylvia's affection for Faith, she never seemed to reach that deeper place where she desired to be. Always when she thought she had found the innermost that each of us seek for in our friend, she felt that Faith drew back, and a reserve as delicate as inflexible barred her approach with chilly gentleness. This seemed so foreign to Faith's nature that Sylvia pondered and grieved over it till the belief came to her that this woman, so truly excellent and love-worthy, did not desire to receive her confidence, and sometimes a bitter fear assailed her that Warwick was not the only reader of her secret trouble. All things have an end, and the last day came none too soon for one dweller under that hospitable roof. Faith refused all entreaties to stay, and looked somewhat anxiously at Warwick as Moor turned from herself to him with the same urgency. "Adam, you will stay. Promise me another week." "I never promised, Geoffrey." Believing that, as no denial came, his request was granted, Moor gave his whole attention to Faith, who was to leave them in an hour. "Sylvia, while I help our cousin to select and fasten up the books and prints she likes to take with her, will you run down into the garden and fill your prettiest basket with our fine grapes? You will like that better than fumbling with folds and string, and you know one's servant should not perform these pleasant services for one's best friends." Glad to be away, Sylvia ran through the long grape walk to its sunniest nook, and standing outside the arch, began to lay the purple clusters in her basket. Only a moment was she there alone. Warwick's shadow, lengthened by the declining sun, soon fell black along the path. He did not see her, nor seem intent on following her. He walked slowly, hat in hand, so slowly that he was but midway down the leafy lane when Faith's voice arrested him. She was in haste, as her hurried step and almost breathless words betrayed, and losing not an instant, she cried before they met "Adam, will you come with me? I cannot leave you here." "Do you doubt me, Faith?" "No, but loving women are so weak." "So strong, you mean. Men are weakest when they love." "Adam, will you come?" "I will follow you. I shall speak with Geoffrey first." "Must you tell him so soon?" "I must." Faith's hand had been on Warwick's arm. As he spoke the last words, she bent her head upon it for an instant, then without another word turned and hurried back as rapidly as she had come, while Warwick stood where she left him, motionless as if buried in some absorbing thought. All had passed in a moment too short, too full of intense surprise to leave Sylvia time for recollection and betrayal of her presence. Half hidden and wholly unobserved, she had seen the unwonted agitation of Faith's countenance and manner, had heard Warwick's softly spoken answers to those eager appeals, and with a great pang had discovered that some tender confidence existed between these two of which she had never dreamed. Sudden as the discovery was its acceptance and belief, for knowing her own weakness, Sylvia found something like relief in the hope that a new happiness for Warwick had ended all temptation, and in time, perhaps all pain for herself. Impulsive as ever, she leaned upon the seeming truth, and made of the fancy a fact, passed into a perfect passion of self-abnegation, thinking, in the brief pause that followed Faith's departure, "This is the change we see in him. This has made him watch me, hoping I had forgotten, as I once said and believed. I should be glad, I will be glad, and let him see that even while I suffer, I can rejoice in that which helps us both." Full of her generous purpose, yet half doubtful how to execute it, Sylvia stepped from the recess where she had stood, and slowly passed toward Warwick, apparently intent on settling her fruity burden as she went. At the first sound of her light step on the gravel he turned, feeling at once that she must have heard him, and eager to learn what significance that short dialogue possessed for her. Only a hasty glance did she give him as she came, but it showed him flushed cheeks, excited eyes, and lips a little tremulous as they said, "These are for Faith. Will you hold the basket while I cover it with leaves?" He took it, and as the first green covering was deftly laid, he asked, below his breath, "Sylvia, did you hear us?" To his unutterable amazement she looked up clearly, and all her heart was in her voice as she answered with a fervency he could not doubt, "Yes, and I was glad to hear it, to know that a nobler woman filled the place I cannot fill. Oh, believe it, Adam, and be sure that the knowledge of your great content will lighten the terrible regret which you have seen as nothing else ever could." Down fell the basket at their feet, and taking her face between his hands, Warwick bent and searched with a glance that seemed to penetrate to her heart's core. For a moment she struggled to escape, but the grasp that held her was immovable. She tried to oppose a steadfast front, and baffle that perilous inspection, but quick and deep rushed the traitorous color over cheek and forehead with its mute betrayal. She tried to turn her eyes away, but those other eyes, dark and dilated with intensity of purpose, fixed her own, and the confronting countenance wore an expression which made its familiar features look awfully large and grand to her panic-stricken sight. A sense of utter helplessness fell on her, courage deserted her, pride changed to fear, defiance to despair, and as the flush faded, the fugitive glance was arrested, and the upturned face became a pale blank, ready to receive the answer that strong scrutiny was slowly bringing to the light, as invisible characters start out upon a page when fire passes over them. Neither spoke, but soon through all opposing barriers, the magnetism of an indomitable will drew forth the truth, set free the captive passion pent so long, and wrung from those reluctant lineaments a full confession of that power which Heaven has gifted with eternal youth. The instant this assurance was his own beyond a doubt, Warwick released her, snatched up his hat, and hurrying down the path vanished in the wood. Spent as with an hour's excitement, and bewildered by emotions which she could no longer master, Sylvia lingered in the grape walk till her husband called her. Then hastily refilling her basket, she shook her hair about her face and went to bid Faith good-bye. Moor was to accompany her to the city, and they left early, that Faith might pause for adieu to Mark and Prudence. "Where is Adam? Has he gone before, or been inveigled into staying?" Moor spoke to Sylvia, but busied in fastening the basket lid, she seemed not to hear, and Faith replied for her. "He will take a later boat. We need not wait for him." When Faith embraced Sylvia all the coldness had melted from her manner, and her voice was tender as a mother's as she whispered low in her ear, "Dear child, if ever you need any help that Geoffrey cannot give, remember cousin Faith." For 2 hours Sylvia sat alone, not idle, for in the first real solitude she had enjoyed for 7 days, she looked deeply into herself, and putting by all disguises owned the truth, and resolved to repair the past if possible, as Faith had counseled in the case which she had now made her own. Like so many of us, Sylvia often saw her errors too late to avoid committing them, and failing to do the right thing at the right moment, kept herself forever in arrears with that creditor who must inevitably be satisfied. She had been coming to this decision all that dreary week, and these quiet hours left her both resolute and resigned. As she sat there while the early twilight began to gather, her eye often turned to Warwick's travelling bag, which Faith, having espied it ready in his chamber, had brought down and laid in the library as a reminder of her wish. As she looked at it, Sylvia's heart yearned toward it in the fond, foolish way which women have of endowing the possessions of those they love with the attractions of sentient things and a portion of their owner's character or claim upon themselves. It was like Warwick, simple and strong, no key, and every mark of the long use which had tested its capabilities and proved them durable. A pair of gloves lay beside it on the chair, and though she longed to touch anything of his, she resisted the temptation till, pausing near them in one of her journeys to the window, she saw a rent in the glove that lay uppermost. That appeal was irresistible. Poor Adam! There has been no one to care for him so long, and Faith does not yet know how. Surely I may perform so small a service for him if he never knows how tenderly I do it. Standing ready to drop her work at a sound, Sylvia snatched a brief satisfaction which solaced her more than an hour of idle lamentation, and as she kissed the glove with a long, sad kiss, and put it down with eyes that dimly saw where it should be, perhaps there went as much real love and sorrow into that little act as ever glorified some greater deed. Then she went to lie in the refuge, as she had named an ancient chair, with her head on its embracing arm, not weeping, but quietly watching the flicker of the fire, which filled the room with warm duskiness, making the twilight doubly pleasant, till a sudden blaze leaped up, showing her that her watch was over and Warwick come. She had not heard him enter, but there he was close before her, his face glowing with the frosty air, his eye clear and kind, and in his aspect that nameless charm which won for him the confidence of whosoever read his countenance. Scarce knowing why, Sylvia felt reassured that all was well, and looked up with more welcome in her heart than she dared betray in words. "Come at last! Where have you been so long, Adam?" "Round the island, I suspect, for I lost my way, and had no guide but instinct to lead me home again. I like to say that word, for though it is not home, it seems so to me now. May I sit here before I go, and warm myself at your fire, Sylvia?" Sure of his answer, he established himself on the stool at her feet, stretched his hands to the grateful blaze, and went on with some inward resolution lending its power and depth to his voice. "I had a question to settle with myself, and went to find my best counselors in the wood. Often, when I am harassed by some perplexity or doubt to which I can find no wise or welcome answer, I walk myself into a belief that it will come, then it appears. I stoop to break a handsome flower, to pick up a cone, or watch some little creature happier than I, and there lies my answer, like a good luck penny, ready to my hand." "Faith has gone, but Geoffrey hopes to keep you here for another week," said Sylvia, ignoring the unsafe topic. "Shall he have his wish?" "Faith expects you to follow her." "And you think I ought?" "I think you will." "When does the next boat leave?" "An hour hence." "I'll wait for it here. Did I wake you coming in?" "I was not asleep, only lazy, warm, and quiet." "And deadly tired. Dear soul, how can it be otherwise, leading the life you lead?" There was such compassion in his voice, such affection in his eye, such fostering kindliness in the touch of the hand he laid upon her own, that Sylvia cried within herself, "Oh, if Geoffrey would only come!" and hoping for that help to save her from herself, she hastily replied "You are mistaken, Adam. My life is easier than I deserve. My husband makes me very
miserable. The truth to me, Sylvia."
Warwick rose as he spoke, closed the door, and came back wearing an expression which caused her to start up with a gesture of entreaty. "No, no, I will not hear you. Adam, you must not speak." He paused opposite her, leaving a little space between them, which he did not cross through all that followed, and with that look inflexible yet pitiful, he answered steadily, "I must speak, and you will hear me. But understand me, Sylvia, I desire and design no French sentiment nor sin like that we heard of, and what I say now I would say if Geoffrey stood between us. I have settled this point after long thought and the heartiest prayers I ever prayed, and much as I have at stake, I speak more for your sake than my own. Therefore, do not entreat nor delay, but listen and let me show you the wrong you are doing yourself, your husband, and your friend." "Does Faith know all the past? Does she desire you do this that her happiness may be secure?" demanded Sylvia. "Faith is no more to me, nor I to Faith, than the friendliest regard can make us. She suspected that I loved you long ago. She now believes that you love me. She pities her cousin tenderly, but will not meddle with the tangle we have made of our 3 lives. Forget that folly, and let me speak to you as I should. When we parted, I thought that you loved Geoffrey. So did you. When I came here, I was sure of it for a day, but on that second night I saw your face as you stood here alone, and then I knew what I have since assured myself of. God knows, I think my gain dearly purchased by his loss. I see your double trial, I know the tribulations in store for all of us, yet, as an honest man, I must speak out, because you ought not to delude yourself or Geoffrey another day." "What right have you to come between us and decide my duty, Adam?" Sylvia spoke passionately, roused to resistance by his manner and the turmoil of emotions warring within her. The right of a sane man to save the woman he loves from destroying her own peace forever, and undermining the confidence of the friend dearest to them both. I know this is not the world's way in such matters, but I care not, because I believe one human creature has a right to speak to another in times like these as if they too stood alone. I will not command, I will appeal to you, and if you are the candid soul I think you, your own words shall prove the truth of what I say. Sylvia, do you love your husband?" "Yes, Adam, dearly." "More than you love me?" "I wish I did, I wish I did." "Are you happy with him?" "I was till you came. I shall be when you are gone." "Never! It is impossible to go back to the blind tranquillity you once enjoyed. Now a single duty lies before you. Delay is weak, deceit is wicked. Utter sincerity alone can help us. Tell Geoffrey all. Then, whether you live your life alone, or one day come to me, there is no false dealing to repent of, and looking the hard fact in the face robs it of one half its terrors. Will you do this, Sylvia?" "No, Adam. Remember what he said that night. I love but few, and those few are my world. I am chief in that world. Shall I destroy it for my selfish pleasure? He waited for me very long, is waiting still. Can I for a second time disappoint the patient heart that would find it easier to give up life than the poor possession which I am? No, I ought not, dare not do it yet. If you dare not speak the truth to your friend, you do not deserve him, and the name is a lie. You ask me to remember what he said that night. I ask you to recall the look with which he begged you not to try him too hardly. Put it to yourself, which is the kinder justice, a full confession now, or a late one hereafter, when longer subterfuge has made it harder for you to offer, bitterer for him to receive. I tell you, Sylvia, it were more merciful to murder him outright than to slowly wear away his faith, his peace, and love by a vain endeavor to perform as a duty what should be your sweetest pleasure, and what will soon become a burden heavier than you can bear. You do not see as I see, you cannot understand what I am to him, nor can I tell you what he is to me. It is not as if I could dislike or despise him for any unworthiness of his own, nor as if he were a lover only. Then I could do much which now is worse than impossible, for I have married him, and it is too late. Oh, Sylvia, why could you not have waited? Why? Because I am what I am, too easily led by circumstances, too entirely possessed by whatever hope, belief, or fear rules me for the hour. Give me a steadfast nature like your own, and I will be strong. I know I am weak, but I am not wilfully wicked, and when I ask you to be silent, it is because I want to save him from the pain of doubt, and try to teach myself to love him as I should. I must have time, but I can bear much and endeavor more persistently than you believe. If I forgot you once, can I not again? And should I not? I am all in all to him, while you, so strong, so self-reliant, can do without my love as you have done till now, and will soon outlive your sorrow for the loss of that which might have made us happy had I been more patient. Yes, I shall outlive it, else I should have little faith in myself, but I shall not forget, and if you would remain forever what you are now to me, you will so act that nothing may mar this memory, if it is to be no more. I doubt your power to forget an affection which has survived so many changes and withstood assaults such as Geoffrey must unconsciously have made upon it. But I have no right to condemn your beliefs, to order your actions, or force you to accept my code of morals if you are not ready for it. You must decide, but do not again deceive yourself, and through whatever comes, hold fast to that which is better worth preserving than husband, happiness, or friend. His words fell cold on Sylvia's ear, for with the inconsistency of a woman's heart, she thought he gave her up too readily, yet honored him more truly for sacrificing both himself and her to the principle that ruled his life and made him what he was. His seeming resignation steadied her, for now he waited her decision, while before he was only bent on executing the purpose wherein he believed salvation lay. She girded up her strength, collected her thoughts, and tried to show him what she believed to be her duty. Let me tell you how it is with me, Adam, and be patient if I am not wise and brave like you, but far too young, too ignorant to bear such troubles well. I am not leaning on my own judgment now, but on Faith's, and though you do not love her as I had hoped, you feel she is one to trust. She said the wife, in that fictitious case which was so real to us, the wife should leave no effort unmade, no self-denial unexacted, till she had fairly proved that she could not be what she had promised. Then, and then only, had she a right to undo the tie that had bound her. I must do this before I think of your love or my own, for on my marriage morning I made a vow within myself that Geoffrey's happiness should be the first duty of my life. I shall keep that vow as sacredly as I will those I made before the world, until I find that it is utterly beyond my power. Then I will break altogether. You have tried that once and failed. No, I have never tried it as I shall now. At first I did not know the truth. Then I was afraid to believe it, and struggling blindly to forget. Now I see clearly. I confess it, I resolve to conquer it, and I will not yield until I have done my best. You say you must respect me. Could you do so if I no longer respected myself? I should not, if I forgot all Geoffrey had borne and done for me, and could not bear and do this thing for him. I must make the effort, and make it silently, for he is very proud with all his gentleness, and would reject the seeming sacrifice, though he would make one doubly hard for the love of me. If I am to stay with him, it spares him the bitterest pain he could suffer. If I am to go, it gives him a few more months of happiness, and I may so prepare him that the parting will be less hard. How others would act, I cannot tell. I only know that this seems right to me, and I must fight my fight alone, even if I die in doing it." She was so earnest, yet so humble, so weak in all but the desire to do well, so young to be tormented with such fateful issues, and withal so steadfast in the grateful yet remorseful tenderness she bore her husband, that though sorely disappointed and not one whit convinced, Warwick could only submit to this woman-hearted child, and love her with redoubled love, both for what she was and what she aspired to be. "Sylvia, what would you have me do?" "You must go away, and for a long time, Adam, because when you are near me my will is swayed by yours, and what you desire I long to give you. Go quite away, and through faith you may learn whether I succeed or fail. It is hard to say this, yet you know it is a truer hospitality in me to send you from my door than to detain and offer you temptation for your daily bread." How strangely Attila came back to him, and all the scenes he had passed through with her. A perilous contrast just then. Yet, despite his pride in the loving little creature who put him from her that she might be worthy of him, one irrepressible lament swelled his heart and passed his lips. "Ah, Sylvia, I thought that parting on the mountain was the hardest I could ever know, but this is harder, for now I have but to say come to me, and you would come." But the bitter moment had its drop of honey, whose sweetness nourished him when all else failed. Sylvia answered with a perfect confidence in that integrity which even her own longing could not bribe. "Yes, Adam, but you will not say it, because feeling as I feel, you know I must not come to you." He did know it, and confessed his submission by folding fast the arms half opened for her, and standing dumb with the words trembling on his lips. It was the bravest action of a life full of real valor, for the sacrifice was not made with more than human fortitude. The man's heart clamored for its right, patience was weary, hope despaired, and all natural instincts mutinied against the command that bound them. But no grain of virtue ever falls wasted to the ground. It drops back upon its giver of regathered strength, and cannot fail of its own reward in some kindred soul's approval, imitation, or delight. It was so, then, as Sylvia went to him, for though she did not touch nor smile upon him, he felt her nearness, and the parting assured him that its power bound them closer than the happiest union. In her face there shone a look half fervent, half devout, and her voice had no falter in it now. "You show me what I should be. All my life I have desired strength of heart and stability of soul. May I not hope to earn for myself a little of the integrity I love in you? If courage, self-denial, and self-help make you what you are, can I have a more effectual guide? You say you shall outlive this passion. Why should I not imitate your brave example, and find the consolations you shall find? Oh, Adam, let me try." You shall." "Then go, go now, while I can say it as I should." "The good Lord bless and help you, Sylvia." She gave him both her hands, but though he only pressed them silently, that pressure nearly destroyed the victory she had won, for the strong grasp snapped the slender guard ring Moor had given her a week ago. She heard it drop, with a golden tinkle on the hearth, saw the dark oval with its doubly significant character roll into the ashes, and felt Warwick's hold tighten as if he echoed the emphatic word uttered when the ineffectual gift was first bestowed. Superstition flowed in Sylvia's blood, and was as unconquerable as the imagination which supplied its food. This omen startled her. It seemed a forewarning that endeavor would be in vain, that submission was wisdom, and that the husband's charm had lost its virtue when the stronger power claimed her. The desire to resist began to waver as the old passionate longing sprang up more eloquently than ever. She felt the rush of a coming impulse, and knew that it would sweep her into Warwick's arms, there to forget her duty, to forfeit his respect. With the last effort of a sorely tried spirit, she tore her hands away, fled up to the room which had never needed lock or key till now, and stifling the sound of those departing steps among the cushions of the little couch where she had wept away childish woes and dreamed girlish dreams, she struggled with the great sorrow of her too early womanhood, uttering with broken voice that petition oftenest quoted from the one prayer which expresses all our needs: "Lead me not into temptation, but deliver me from evil." Chapter 17.
of Moods. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Sherry Lothridge. Moods by Louisa May Alcott. Chapter 17. Asleep and awake. March winds were howling round the house. The clock was striking 2. The library lamp still burned, and Moor sat writing with an anxious face. Occasionally he paused to look backward through the leaves of the book in which he wrote. Sometimes he sat with suspended pen, thinking deeply, and once or twice he laid it down to press his hand over eyes more weary than the mind that compelled them to this late service. Returning to his work after one of these pauses, he was a little startled to see Sylvia standing on the threshold of the door. Rising hastily to ask if she were ill, he stopped halfway across the room, for, with a thrill of apprehension and surprise, he saw that she was asleep. Her eyes were open, fixed and vacant, her face reposeful, her breathing regular, and every sense apparently wrapped in the profoundest unconsciousness. Fearful of awakening her too suddenly, Moor stood motionless, yet full of interest, for this was his first experience of somnambulism, and it was a strange, almost an awful sight to witness the blind obedience of the body to the soul that ruled it. For several minutes she remained where she first appeared. Then, as if the dream demanded action, she stooped and seemed to take some object from a chair beside the door, held it an instant, kissed it softly, and laid it down. Slowly and steadily she went across the room, avoiding all obstacles with the unerring instinct that often leads the sleep-walker through dangers that appall his waking eye, and sat down in the great chair he had left, leaning her cheek upon its arm and resting tranquilly for several minutes. Soon the dream disturbed her, and lifting her head she bent forward as if addressing or caressing some one seated at her feet. Involuntarily her husband smiled, for often when they were alone he sat there reading or talking to her, while she played with his hair, likening its brown abundance to young Milton's curling locks in the picture overhead. The smile had hardly risen when it was scared away, for Sylvia suddenly sprang up with both hands out, crying in a voice that rent the silence with its imploring energy, "No, no, you must not speak. I will not hear it." Her cry woke her. Consciousness and memory returned together, and her face whitened with a look of terror as her bewildered eyes showed her not Warwick, but her husband. This look, so full of fear, yet so intelligent, startled more than the apparition or the cry had done, for a conviction flashed into his mind that some unsuspecting trouble had been burdening Sylvia, and was now finding vent against her will. Anxious to possess himself of the truth, and bent on doing so, he veiled his purpose for a time, letting his unchanged manner reassure and compose her. "Dear child, don't look so lost and wild. You are quite safe, and have only been wandering in your sleep. Why, Mrs. Macbeth, have you murdered someone, that you go crying out in this uncanny way, frightening me as much as I seem to have frightened you?" "I have murdered sleep. What did I do? What did I say?" she asked, trembling and shrinking as she dropped into her chair. Hoping to quiet her, he took his place on the footstool and told her what had passed. At first she listened with a divided mind, for so strongly was she still impressed with the vividness of the dream, she half expected Warwick to rise like Banquo and claim the seat that a single occupancy seemed to have made his own. An expression of intense relief replaced that of fear when she had heard all, and she composed herself with the knowledge that her secret was still hers, for dreary bosom guest as it was, she had not yet resolved to end her trial. "What set you to walking, Sylvia?" "I recollect hearing the clock strike 1, and thinking I would come down to see what you were doing so late, but must have dropped off and carried out my design asleep. You see, I put on wrapper and slippers, as I always do when I take nocturnal rambles awake. How pleasant the fire feels, and how cozy you look down here. No wonder you like to stay and enjoy it." She leaned forward, warming her hands in unconscious imitation of Adam on the night which she had been recalling before she slept. Moore watched her with increasing disquiet, for never had he seen her in a mood like this. She evaded his question, she averted her eyes, she half hid her face, and with a gesture that of late had grown habitual, seemed to try to hide her heart. Often had she baffled him, sometimes grieved him, but never before showed that she feared him. This wounded both his love and pride, and this fixed his resolution to wring from her an explanation of the changes which had passed over her within these winter months, for they had been many and mysterious. As if she feared silence, Sylvia spoke again. "Why are you up so late? This is not the first time I have seen your lamp burning when I woke. What are you studying so deeply?" "My wife." Leaning on the arm of her chair, he looked up wistfully, tenderly, as if inviting confidence, suing for affection. The words, the look, smote Sylvia to the heart, and but for the thought, "I have not tried long enough," she would have uttered the confession that leaped to her lips. Once spoken, it would be too late for secret effort or success, and this man's happiest hopes would vanish in a breath. Knowing that his nature was almost as sensitively fastidious as a woman's, she also knew that the discovery of her love for Adam, innocent as it had been, self-denying as it tried to be, would forever mar the beauty of his wedded life for more. No hour of it would seem sacred, no act, look, or word of hers entirely his own, nor any of the dear delights of home remain undarkened by the shadow of his friend. She could not speak yet, and turned her eyes to the fire. She asked, "Why study me? Have you no better book?" "None that I love to read so well, or have such need to understand, because though nearest and dearest as you are to me, I seem to know you less than any friend I have. I do not wish to wound you, dear, nor be exacting, but since we were married you have grown more shy than ever, and the act which should have drawn us tenderly together seems to have estranged us. You never talk now of yourself, or ask me to explain the working of that busy mind of yours, and lately you have sometimes shunned me, as if solitude were pleasanter than my society. Is it, Sylvia?" "Sometimes. I always like to be alone, you know." She answered as truly as she could, feeling that his love demanded every confidence, but the one cruel one which would destroy its peace past help. "I knew I had a most tenacious heart, but I hoped it was not a selfish one," he sorrowfully said. "Now I see that it is, and deeply regret that my hopeful spirit, my impatient love, has brought disappointment to us both. I should have waited longer, should have been less confident of my own power to win you, and never let you waste your life in vain endeavors to be happy, when I was not all to you that you expected. I should have not consented to your wish to spend the winter here so much alone with me. I should have known that such a quiet home and studious companion could not have many charms for a young girl like you. Forgive me, I will do better, and this one-sided life of ours shall be changed, for while I have been supremely content, you have been miserable." It was impossible to deny it, and with a tearless sob she laid her arm about his neck, her head on his shoulder, and mutely confessed the truth of what he said. The trouble deepened his face, but he spoke out more cheerfully, believing that he had found the secret sorrow. "Thank heaven, nothing is past mending, and we will yet be happy. An entire change shall be made. You shall no longer devote yourself to me, but I to you. Will you go abroad and forget this dismal home until its rest grows inviting, Sylvia?" "No, Geoffrey, not yet. I will learn to make the home pleasant. I will work harder and leave no time for ennui and discontent. I promise to make your happiness, and I can do it better here than anywhere. Let me try again." "No, Sylvia, you work too hard already. You do everything with such vehemence, you wear out your body before your will is weary, and that brings melancholy. I am very credulous, but when I see acts belie words I cease to believe. These months assure me that you are not happy. Have I found the secret thorn that frets you?" She did not answer, for truth she could not, and falsehood she would not give him. He rose, went walking to and fro, searching memory, heart, and conscience for any other cause, but found none, and saw only one way out of his bewilderment. He drew a chair before her, sat down, and looking at her with the masterful expression dominant in his face, asked briefly, "Sylvia, have I been tyrannical, unjust, unkind, since you came to me?" "Oh, Geoffrey, too generous, too just, too tender." "Have I claimed any rights but those you gave me, entreated or demanded any sacrifices knowingly and wilfully?" "Never." "Now I do claim my right to know your heart. I do entreat and demand one thing, your confidence." Then she felt that the hour had come, and tried to prepare to meet it as she should by remembering that she had endeavored prayerfully, desperately, despairingly, to do her duty, and had failed. Warwick was right. She could not forget him. There was such vitality in the man and in the sentiment he inspired that it endowed his memory with a power more potent than the visible presence of her husband. The knowledge of his love now undid the work that ignorance had helped patience and pride to achieve before. The more she struggled to forget, the deeper, dearer grew the yearning that must be denied, till months of fruitless effort convinced her that it was impossible to outlive a passion more indomitable than will or penance or perseverance. Now she saw the wisdom of Adam's warning, and felt that he knew both his friend's heart and her own better than herself. Now she bitterly regretted that she had not spoken out when he was there to help her, and before the least deceit had taken the dignity from sorrow. Nevertheless, though she trembled, she resolved, and while more spoke, she made ready to atone for past silence by a perfect loyalty to truth. "My wife, concealment is not generosity, for the heaviest trouble shared together could not so take the sweetness from my life, the charm from home, or make me more miserable than this want of confidence. It is a double wrong, because you not only mar my peace, but destroy your own by wasting health and happiness in vain endeavors to bear some grief alone. Your eye seldom meets mine now. Your words are measured, your actions cautious, your innocent gaiety all gone. You hide your heart from me and hide your face. I seem to have lost the frank girl whom I loved, and found a melancholy woman who suffers silently till her honest nature rebels and brings her to confession in her sleep. There is no page of my life which I have not freely shown you. Do not deserve an equal candor? Shall I not receive it? Yes. Sylvia, what stands between us? Adam Warwick. Earnest as a prayer, brief as a command, had been the question. Instantaneous was the reply, as Sylvia knelt down before him, put back the veil that should never hide her from him any more, looked up into her husband's face without one shadow in her own, and steadily told all. The revelation was too utterly unexpected, too difficult of belief to be at once accepted or understood. Moore started at the name, then leaned forward breathless and intent, as if to seize the words before they left her lips. Words that recall incidents and acts darken on meaning, till the spark of intelligence fired a long train of memories and enlightened him with that terrible rapidity. Blinded by his own devotion, the knowledge of Adam's love and loss seemed gauges of his fidelity. And though that he loved Sylvia had never occurred to him, and seemed incredible even when her own lips told it. She had been right in fearing the effect this knowledge would have upon him. It stung his pride, wounded his heart, and forever marred his faith in love and friendship. As the truth broke over him, cold and bitter as a billow of the sea, she saw gathering in his face the still white grief and indignation of an outraged spirit, suffering with all a woman's pain, with all a man's intensity of passion. His eyes grew fiery and stern, the veins rose dark upon his forehead, the lines about the mouth showed hard and grim, the whole face altered terribly. As she looked, Sylvia thanked heaven that Warwick was not there to feel the sudden atonement for an innocent offence which his friend might have exacted before this natural but unworthy temptation had passed by. Now I have given all my confidence, though I may have broken both our hearts in doing it. I do not hope for pardon yet, but I am sure of pity, and I leave my fate in your hands. Geoffrey, what shall I do? Wait for me. And putting her away, Moore left the room. Suffering too much in mind to remember that she had a body, Sylvia remained where she was, and leaning her head upon her hands,
tried to recall what had passed to nerve herself for what was to come. Her first sensation was one of unutterable relief.
The long struggle was over. The haunting care was gone. There was nothing now to conceal. She might be herself again, and her spirit rose with something of its old elasticity as the heavy burden was removed. A moment she enjoyed this hard-won freedom, then the memory that the burden was not lost but laid on the other shoulders filled her with an anguish too sharp to find vent in tears, too deep to leave any hope of cure except in action. But how act? She had performed the duty so long, so vainly delayed, and when the first glow of satisfaction passed, found redoubled anxiety, regret, and pain before her. Clear and hard the truth stood there, and no power of hers could recall the words that showed it to her husband, could give them back to the early blindness, or the later vicissitudes of hope and fear. In the long silence that filled the room, she had time to calm her perturbation and comfort her remorse by the vague but helpful belief which seldom deserts sanguine spirits, that something, as yet unseen and unsuspected, would appear to heal the breach, to show what was to be done, and to make all happy in the end. When Moore went, or how long he stayed, Sylvia never knew, but when at length he came, her first glance showed her that pride is as much to be dreaded as passion. No gold is without alloy, and now she saw the shadow of a nature which had seemed all sunshine. She knew he was very proud, but never thought to be the cause of its saddest manifestation, one which showed her that its presence could make the silent sorrow of a just and gentle man a harder trial to sustain than the hottest anger and bitterest reproach. Scarcely paler than when he went, there was no sign of violent emotion in his countenance. His eye shone keen and dark, an anxious fold crossed his forehead, and a melancholy gravity replaced the cheerful serenity his face once wore. Wherein the alteration lay, Sylvia could not tell, but over the whole man some subtle change had passed. The sudden frost which had blighted the tenderest affection of his love seemed to have left its chill behind, robbing his manner of its cordial charm, his voice of its heartsome ring, and giving him the look of one who sternly said, "I must suffer, but it shall be alone." Cold and quiet he stood regarding her with a strange expression, as if endeavoring to realize the truth, and see it her not his wife but Warwick's lover. Oppressed by the old fear, now augmented by a measureless regret, she could only look up at him, feeling that her husband had become her judge. Yet as she looked she was conscious of a momentary wonder at the seeming transposition of character in the two so near and dear to her. Strong-hearted Warwick wept like any child, but accepted his disappointment without complaint and bore it manfully. Moore, from whom she would sooner have expected some demonstration, grew stormy first, then stern, as she once believed his friend would have done. She forgot that Moore's pain was the sharper, this wound the deeper, for the patient hope cherished so long, the knowledge that he never had been, never could be loved as he loved, the sense of wrong that could not but burn, even in the meekest heart, at such a late discovery, such an entire loss. Sylvia spoke first, not audibly, but with a little gesture of supplication, a glance of sorrowful submission. He answered both, not by lamentation or reproach, but by just enough of his accustomed tenderness, in touch and tone to make her tears break forth. As he placed her in the ancient chair so often occupied together, took the one opposite, and sweeping a clear space on the table between them, looked across it with the air of a man bent on seeing his way and following it at any cost. Now, Sylvia, I can listen as I should. Oh, Geoffrey, what can I say? Repeat all you have already told me. I only gathered one fact then. Now I want the circumstances, for I find this confession difficult of belief. Perhaps no sterner expiation could have been required of her than to sit there,
face to face, eye to eye, and tell again that little history of thwarted love and fruitless endeavor. Excitement had given her courage for the first confession.
Now it was torture to carefully repeat what had poured freely from her lips before, but she did it, glad to prove her penance by any test he might apply. Tears often blinded her, uncontrollable emotion often arrested her, and more than once she turned on him a beseeching look, which asked as plainly as words, "Must I go on?" Intent on learning all, Moore was unconscious of the trial he imposed, unaware that the change in himself was the keenest reproach he could have made, and still, with a persistency as gentle as inflexible, he pursued his purpose to the end. When great drops rolled down her cheeks, he dried them silently. When she paused, he waited till she calmed herself, and when she spoke he listened with few interruptions, but a question now and then. Occasionally a sudden flush of passionate pain swept across his face, as some phrase, implying rather than expressing Warwick's love or Sylvia's longing, escaped the narrator's lips, and when she described their parting on that very spot, his eye went from her to the hearth, her words seemed to make desolate, with a glance she never could forget. But when the last question was answered, the last appeal for pardon brokenly uttered, nothing but the pale pride remained, and his voice was cold and quiet as his mien. Yes, it is this which has baffled and kept me groping in the dark so long, for I wholly trusted that I wholly loved. Alas, it was that very confidence that made my task seem so necessary and so hard. How I often longed to go to you with my great trouble, as I used to do with lesser ones. But here you would suffer more than I, and having done the wrong, it was for me to pay the penalty. So like many another weak yet willing soul, I tried to keep you happy at all costs. One frank word before I married you would have spared us.
Could you not foresee the end, and dare to speak it, Sylvia? I see it now.
I did not then, else I would have spoken as freely as I speak tonight. I thought I had outlived my love for Adam. It seemed kind to spare you a knowledge that would disturb your friendship, so though I told the truth, I did not tell it all. I thought temptations came from without. I could withstand such, and I did, even when I wore Adam's shape. This temptation came so suddenly, seemed so harmless, generous and just, that I yielded to it unconscious that it was one. Surely I deceived myself as cruelly as I did you, and God knows I have tried to atone for it when time taught me my fatal error. Poor child, it was too soon for you to play the perilous game of hearts. I should have known it, and left you to the safe and simple joys of girlhood. Forgive me that I have kept you a prisoner so long. Take off the fetter I put on, and go, Sylvia. No, do not put me from you yet. Do not think that I can hurt you so, and then be glad to leave you suffering alone. Look like your kind self, if you can. Talk to me as you used to. Let me show you my heart, and you will see how large a place you fill in it. Let me begin again, for now the secret is told there is no fear to keep you out, love, and I can give my whole strength to learning the lesson you have tried so patiently to teach. You cannot, Sylvia. We are as much divorced as if judge and jury had decided the righteous but hard separation for us. You can never be a wife to me with an unconquerable affection in your heart. I can never be your husband while the shadow of a fear remains. I will have all or nothing. Adam foretold this. He knew you best, and I should have followed the brave counsel he gave me long ago. Oh, if he were only here to help us now. The desire broke from Sylvia's lips involuntarily as she turned for strength to the strong soul that loved her. But it was like wind to smoldering fire. A pang of jealousy wrung Moore's heart, and he spoke out with a flash of the eye that startled Sylvia more than the rapid change of voice and manner.
Hush! Say anything of yourself or me, and I can bear it.
But spare me the sound of Adam's name tonight. A man's nature is not forgiving like a woman's, and the best of us harbor impulses you know nothing of. If I am to lose wife, friend, and home, for God's sake leave me my self-respect. All the coldness and pride passed from Moore's face as the climax of his sorrow came. With an impetuous gesture he threw his arms across the table and laid down his head in a paroxysm of tearless suffering such as men only know. How Sylvia longed to speak, but what consolation could the tenderest words supply? She searched for some alleviating suggestion, some happier hope. None came. Her eye turned imploringly to the pictured fates above her, as if imploring them to aid her. But they looked back at her inexorably dumb, and instinctively her thought passed beyond them to the ruler of all fates, asking the help which never is refused. No words embodied her appeal, no sound expressed it, only a voiceless cry from the depths of a contrite spirit, owning its weakness, making known its want. She prayed for submission, but her deeper need was seen, and when she asked for patience to endure, heaven sent her power to act, and out of this sharp trial brought her a better strength and clearer knowledge of herself than years of smoother experience could have bestowed. The sense of security, of stability, came to her at that entire reliance assured her, by its all-sustaining power, that she had found what she most needed to make life clear to her and duty sweet. With her face in her hands she sat, forgetful that she was not alone, as in that brief but precious moment she felt the exceeding comfort of a childlike faith in the one friend who, when we are deserted by all, even by ourselves, puts forth his hand and gathers us tenderly to himself. Her husband's voice recalled her, and looking up, she showed him such an earnest, patient countenance, it touched him like an unconscious rebuke. The first tears she had seen rose to his eyes, and all the old tenderness came back into his voice, softening the dismissal which had been more coldly begun. Dear, silence and rest are best for both of us tonight. We cannot treat this trouble as we should till we are calmer. Then we will take counsel how soonest to end what never should have begun. Forgive me, pray for me, and in sleep forget me for a little while. He held the door for her, but as she passed, Sylvia lifted her face for the good night caress without which she had never left him since she became his wife. She did not speak, but her eye humbly besought his token of forgiveness. Nor was it denied. Moore laid his hand upon her lips, saying, "These are Adam's now," and kissed her on the forehead. Such a little thing, but it overcame Sylvia with the sorrowful certainty of the loss which had befallen both, and she crept away, feeling herself an exile from the heart and home whose happy mistress she could never be again. Moore watched the little figure going upward, and weeping softly as it went, as if he echoed the sad "never any more" which those tears expressed, and when it vanished with a backward look, shut himself in alone with his great sorrow. End of chapter 17.
Chapter 18 of Moods. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Moods by Louisa May Alcott. Chapter 18. What next? Sylvia laid her head down on her pillow, believing that this night would be the longest, saddest she had ever known. But before she had time to sigh for sleep, it wrapped her in its comfortable arms and held her till day broke. Sunshine streamed across the room, and early birds piped on the budding boughs that swayed before the window. But no morning smile saluted her, no morning flower awaited her, and nothing but a little note lay on the unpressed pillow at her side. Sylvia, I have gone away to Faith, because this proud, resentful spirit of mine must be subdued before I meet you. I leave that behind me which will speak to you more kindly, calmly than I can now, and show you that my effort has been equal to my failure. There is nothing for me to do but submit, manfully if I must, meekly if I can, and this short exile will prepare me for the longer one to come. Take counsel with those nearer and dearer to you than myself, and secure the happiness which I have so ignorantly delayed, but cannot wilfully destroy. God be with you, and through all that is and is to come, remember that you remain beloved for ever in the heart of Geoffrey Moore. Sylvia had known many sad uprisings, but never a sadder one than this, and the hours that followed aged her more than any year had done. All day she wandered aimlessly to and fro, for the inward conflict would not let her rest. The house seemed home no longer when its presiding genius was gone, and everywhere some token of his former presence touched her with its mute reproach. She asked no counsel of her family, for well she knew the outburst of condemnation, incredulity, and grief that would assail her there. They could not help her yet. They would only augment perplexities, weaken convictions, and distract her mind. When she was sure of herself, she would tell them, endure their indignation and regret, and steadily execute the new purpose, whatever it should be. To many it might seem an easy task to break the bond that burdened and assume the tie that blessed. But Sylvia had grown wise in self-knowledge, timorous through self-delusion. Therefore the greater the freedom given her, the more she hesitated to avail herself of it. The nobler each friend grew as she turned from one to the other, the more impossible seemed the decision, for generous spirit and loving heart contended for the mastery, yet neither won. She knew that Moore had put her from him, never to be recalled till some miracle was wrought that should make her truly his. This renunciation showed her how much he had become to her, how entirely she had learned to lean upon him, and how great a boon such a perfect love was in itself. Even the prospect of a life with Warwick brought forebodings with its hope. Reason made her listen to many doubts which hitherto passion had suppressed. Would she never tire of his unrest? Could she fill so large a heart and give it power as well as warmth? Might not the two wills clash, the ardent natures inflame one another, the stronger intellect exhaust the weaker, and disappointment come again? And as she asked these questions, conscience, the monitor whom no bribe can tempt, no threat silence, invariably answered, yes. But chief among the cares that beset her was one that grew more burdensome with thought. By her own will she had put her liberty into another's keeping. Law confirmed the act, gospel sanctioned the vow, and it could only be redeemed by paying the costly price demanded of those who own that they have drawn a blank in the lottery of marriage. Public opinion is a grim ghost that daunts the bravest, and Sylvia knew that trials lay before her from which she would shrink and suffer, as only a woman sensitive and proud as she could shrink and suffer. Once apply this remedy, and any tongue would have the power to wound, any eye to insult with pity or contempt, any stranger to criticize or condemn, and she would have no means of redress, no place of refuge, even in that stronghold, Adam's heart. All that dreary day she wrestled with these stubborn facts, but could neither mould nor modify them as she would, and evening found her spent, but not decided. Too excited for sleep, yet too weary for exertion, she turned bedward, hoping that the darkness and the silence of night would bring good counsel, if not rest. Till now she had shunned the library as one shuns the spot where one has suffered most, but as she passed the open door the gloom that reigned within seemed typical of that which had fallen on its absent master, and following the impulse of the moment, Sylvia went in to light it with the little glimmer of her lamp. Nothing had been touched, for no hand but her own preserved the order of this room, and all household duties had been neglected on that day. The old chair stood where she had left it, and over its arm was thrown the velvet coat, half dressing gown, half blouse, that Moore liked to wear at this household trysting place. Sylvia bent to fold it smoothly as it hung, and feeling that she must solace herself with some touch of tenderness, laid her cheek against the soft garment, whispering, "Good night." Something glittered on the cushion of the chair, and looking nearer she found a steel-clasped book, upon the cover of which lay a dead heliotrope, a little key. It was Moore's diary, and now she understood that passage of the note which had been obscure before. "I leave that behind me which will speak to you more kindly, calmly than I can now, and show you that my effort has been equal to my failure." She had often begged to read it, threatened to pick the lock, and felt the strongest curiosity to learn what was contained in the long entries that he daily made. Her requests had always been answered with the promise of entire possession of the book when a year was out. Now he gave it, though the year was not gone, and many leaves were yet unfilled. He thought she would come to this room first, would see her morning flower laid ready for her, and, sitting in what they called their refuge, would draw some comfort for herself, some palliation for his innocent offence, from the record so abruptly ended. She took it, went away to her own room, unlocked the short romance of his wedded life, and found her husband's heart laid bare before her. It was a strange and solemn thing to look so deeply into the private experience of a fellow being, to trace the birth and progress of purposes and passions, the motives of action, the secret aspirations, the besetting sins that made up the inner life he had been leading beside her. Moore wrote with an eloquent sincerity, because he had put himself into his book, as if feeling the need of some confidant, he had chosen the only one that pardons egotism. Here, too, Sylvia saw her chameleon self, etched with loving care, endowed with all gifts and graces, studied with unflagging zeal, and made the idol of a life. Often a tuneful spirit seemed to assert itself, and passing from smooth prose to smoother poetry, sonnet, song, or psalm, flowed down the page in cadences stately, sweet, or solemn, filling the reader with delight at the discovery of a gift so genuine, yet so shyly folded up within itself, unconscious that its modesty was the surest token of its worth. More than once Sylvia laid her face into the book, and added her involuntary comment on some poem or passage made pathetic by the present, and more than once paused to wonder, with exceeding wonder, why she could not give such genius and affection its reward. Had she needed any confirmation of the fact, so hard to teach herself, this opening of his innermost would have given it. For while she bitterly grieved over the death blow she had dealt his happy hope, it no longer seemed a possibility to change her stubborn heart, or lessen by a fraction the debt which she sadly felt could only be repaid in friendship's silver, not love's gold. All night she lay there like some pictured Magdalene, purer but as penitent as Correggio's Magdalene, with the book, the lamp, the melancholy eyes, the golden hair that painters love. All night she read, gathering courage, not consolation, from those pages, for seeing what she was not showed her what she might become, and when she turned the little key upon that story without an end, Sylvia the girl was dead, but Sylvia the woman had begun to live. Lying in the rosy hush of dawn, there came to her a sudden memory. "If you ever need help that Geoffrey cannot give, remember Cousin Faith." This was the hour Faith foresaw. Moore had gone to her with his trouble. Why not follow and let this woman, wise, discreet, and gentle, show her what should come next? The newly risen sun saw Sylvia away upon her journey to Faith's home among the hills. She lived alone, a cheerful, busy, solitary soul, demanding little of others, yet giving freely to whomsoever asked an alms of her. Sylvia found the grey cottage nestled in a hollow of the mountain side, a pleasant hermitage, secure and still. Mistress and maid composed the household, but none of the gloom of isolation darkened the sunshine that pervaded it. Peace seemed to sit upon its threshold, content to brood beneath its eaves, and the atmosphere of home to make it beautiful. When some momentous purpose or event absorbs us, we break through fears and formalities, act out ourselves forgetful of reserve, and use the plainest phrases to express emotions which need no ornament and little aid from language. Sylvia illustrated this fact then, for without hesitation or embarrassment she entered Miss Dane's door, called no servant to announce her, but went as if by instinct straight to the room where Faith sat alone, with the simplest greeting asked, "Is Geoffrey here?" "He was here an hour ago." "And will be an hour hence. I sent him out to rest, for he cannot sleep. I am glad you came to him. He has not learned to do without you yet." With no bustle of surprise or sympathy, Faith put away her work, took off the hat and cloak, drew her guest beside her on the couch before the one deep window looking down the valley, and gently chafing the chilly hands in warm ones, said nothing more till Sylvia spoke. "Has he told you all the wrong I have done him?" "Yes, and found a little comfort here. Do you need consolation also?" "Can you ask? But I need something more, and no one can give it to me so well as you. I want to be set right, to hear things called by their true names, to be taken out of myself and made to see why I am always doing wrong while trying to do so well. Your father, sister, or brother are fitter for that task than I. Have you tried them?" "No, and I will not. They love me, but they could not help me, for they would beg me to conceal if I cannot forget, to endure if I cannot conquer, and abide by my mistake at all costs. That is not the help I want. I desire to know the one just thing to be done, and to make me brave enough to do it, though friends lament, gossips clamour, and the heavens fall. I am in earnest now. Rate me sharply, drag out my weaknesses, shame my follies, show no mercy to my selfish hopes, and when I can no longer hide from myself, put me in the way I should go, and I will follow it though my feet bleed at every step." She was in earnest now, terribly so, but still Faith drew back, though her compassionate face belied her hesitating words. "Go to Adam. Who wiser or more just than he?" "I cannot. He, as well as Geoffrey, loves me too well to decide for me. You stand between them, wise as the one, gentle as the other, and you do not care for me enough to let affection hoodwink reason. Faith, you bade me come. Do not cast me off, for if you shut your heart against me, I know not where to go." Despairing she spoke, disconsolate she looked, and Faith's reluctance vanished. The maternal aspect returned, her voice resumed its warmth, her eye its benignity, and Sylvia was reassured before a word was spoken. "I do not cast you off, nor shut my heart against you. I only hesitated to assume such responsibility, and shrunk from the task because of compassion, not coldness. Sit here and tell me all your troubles, Sylvia. That is so kind. It seems quite natural to turn to you as if I had a claim upon you. Let me have, and if you can, love me a little, because I have no mother and need one very much." "My child, you shall not need one any more." "I feel that, and am comforted already. Faith, if you were me and stood where I stand, beloved by two men, either of whom any woman might be proud to call husband, putting self away, to which should you cleave?" "To neither." Sylvia paled and trembled as if the oracle she had invoked was an unanswerable voice pronouncing the inevitable. She watched Faith's countenance a moment, groping for her meaning, failed to find it, and whispered below her breath, "Can I know why?" Because your husband is, your lover should be your friend and nothing more. You have been hardly taught the lesson many have to learn, that friendship cannot fill love's place, yet should be kept inviolate, and served as an austerer mistress who can make life very beautiful to such as feel her worth and deserve her delights. Adam taught me this, for though Geoffrey took you from him, he still held fast his friend, letting no disappointment sour, no envy alienate, no resentment destroy the perfect friendship years of mutual fidelity have built up between them. Yes, cried Sylvia, how I have honoured Adam for that steadfastness, and how I have despised myself because I could not be as wise and faithful in the earlier, safer sentiment I felt for Geoffrey. Be wise and faithful now. Cease to be the wife, but remain the friend. Freely give all you can with honesty, not one jot more. Never did man possess a truer friend than I will be to him, if he will let me. But faith, if I may be that to Geoffrey, may I not be something nearer and dearer to Adam? Would you not dare me to hope it, were you me? No, Sylvia, never. Why not? If you were blind, a cripple, or cursed with some incurable infirmity of body, would you not hesitate to bind yourself and your affliction to another? You know I should not only hesitate, but utterly refuse. I do know it. Therefore I venture to show you why, according to my belief, you should not marry Adam. I cannot tell you as I ought, but only try to show you where to seek the explanation of my seeming harsh advice. There are diseases more subtle and dangerous than any that vex our flesh, diseases that should be as carefully cured, if curable, as inexorably prevented from spreading, as any malady we dread. A paralysed will, a morbid mind, a mad temper, a tainted heart, a blind soul, are afflictions to be as much regarded as bodily infirmities. Nay more, inasmuch as souls are of greater value than perishable flesh, where this is religiously taught, believed, and practised, marriage becomes in truth a sacrament, blessed of God. Children thank parents for the gift of life. Parents see in children living satisfactions and rewards, not reproaches or retributions doubly heavy to be borne, for the knowledge that where two sinned, many must inevitably suffer. You try to tell me gently, Faith, but I see that you consider me one of the innocent unfortunates, who have no right to marry till they be healed, perhaps never. I have dimly felt this during the past year. Now I know it, and thank God I have no child to reproach me hereafter for bequeathing it the mental ills I have not yet outlived. Dear Sylvia, you are an exceptional case in all respects, because an extreme one. The ancient theology of two contending spirits in one body is strangely exemplified in you, for each rules by turns, and each helps or hinders as moods and circumstances lead. Even in the great event of a woman's life, you were thwarted by conflicting powers, impulse and ignorance, passion and pride, hope and despair. Now you stand at the parting of the ways, looking wistfully along the pleasant one, where Adam seems to beckon, while I point down the rugged one, where I have walked, and though my heart aches as I do it, counsel you as I would a daughter of my own. I thank you. I will follow you, but my life looks very barren if I must relinquish my desire. Not as barren as if you possessed your desire, and found in it another misery and mistake. Could you have loved Geoffrey, it might have been safe and well with you. Loving Adam, it is neither. Let me show you why. He is an exception like yourself. Perhaps that explains your attraction for each other. In him the head rules, in Geoffrey the heart. The one criticises, the other loves mankind. Geoffrey is proud and private in all that lies nearest him, clings to persons, and is faithful as a woman. Adam has only the pride of an intellect which tests all things, and abides by its own insight. He clings to principles. Persons are but animated facts or ideas. He seizes, searches, uses them, and when they have no more for him, drops them like a husk whose kernel he has secured, passing on to find and study other samples without regret, but with unabated zeal. For life to him is perpetual progress, and he obeys the law of his nature as steadily as sun or sea. Is not this so?" "All true. What more, Faith? Few women, if wise, would dare to marry this man, noble and love-worthy as he is, till time has tamed and experience developed him. Even then the risk is great, for he demands and unconsciously absorbs into himself the personality of others, making large returns, but of a kind which only those as strong, sagacious, and steadfast as himself can receive and adapt to their individual uses, without being overcome and possessed, that none of us should be, except by the spirit stronger than man, purer than woman. You feel, though you do not understand this power. You know that his presence excites, yet wearies you, that, while you love, you fear him, and even when you long to be all in all to him, you doubt your ability to make his happiness. Am I not right?" "I must say yes." "Then it is scarcely necessary for me to tell you that I think this unequal marriage would be but a brief one for you, bright at its beginning, dark at its end. With him you would exhaust yourself in passionate endeavours to follow where he led. He would not know this, you would not confess it, but too late you might both learn that you were too young, too ardent, too frail in all but the might of love to be his wife. It is like a wood bird mating with an eagle, straining its little wings to scale the sky with him, blinding itself with gazing at the sun, striving to fill and warm the wild eyrie which becomes its home, and perishing in the stern solitude the other loves, yet too fond and faithful to regret the safer nest among the grass, the gentler mate it might have had, the summer life and winter flitting to the south for which it was designed. Faith, you frighten me. You seem to see and show me all the dim forebodings I have hidden away within myself, because I could not understand or dared not face them. How have you learned so much? How can you read me so well? And who told you all these things of us all? I had an unhappy girlhood in a discordant home. Early cares and losses made me old in youth, and taught me to observe how others bore their burdens. Since then solitude has led me to study and reflect upon the question toward which my thoughts inevitably turned. Concerning yourself and your past, Geoffrey told me much, but Adam more. Have you seen him? Has he been here? When, Faith? When? Light and colour flashed back into Sylvia's face, and the glad eagerness of her voice was a pleasant sound to hear, after the despairing accents gone before. Faith sighed, but answered fully, carefully, while the compassion of her look deepened as she spoke. I saw him but a week ago, vehement and vigorous as ever. He has come hither often during the winter, has watched you unseen, and brought me news of you which made Geoffrey's disclosure scarcely a surprise. He said you bade him hear of you through me, that he preferred to come, not write, for letters were often false interpreters, but face to face one gets the real thought of one's friend by look as well as word, and the result is satisfactory. That is Adam. But what more did he say? How did you advise him? I know he asked counsel of you, as we all have done. He did, and I gave it as frankly as to you and Geoffrey. He made me understand you, judge you leniently, see in you the virtues you have cherished despite drawbacks, such as few have to struggle with. Your father made Adam his confessor during the happy month when you first knew him. I need not tell you how he received and preserved such a trust. He betrayed no confidence, but in speaking of you I saw that his knowledge of the father taught him to understand the daughter. It was well and beautifully done, and did we need anything to endear him to us, this trait of character would do it, for it is a rare endowment, the power of overcoming all obstacles of pride, age, and the sad reserve self-condemnation brings us, and making confession a grateful healing. I know it. We tell our sorrows to such as Geoffrey, our sins to such as Adam. But, Faith, when you spoke of me, did you say to him what you have been saying to me about my unfitness to be his wife because of inequality, and my unhappy inheritance? Could I do otherwise when he fixed that commanding eye of his upon me, asking, is my love as wise as it is warm? He is one of those who force the hardest truths from us by the simple fact that they can bear it, and would do the same for us. He needed it then, for though instinct was right, hence his anxious question, his heart, never so entirely roused as now, made it difficult for him to judge of your relations to one another, and there my woman's insight helped him. What did he do when you told him? I see that you will yet hesitate to tell me. I think you have been preparing me to hear it. Speak out. Though my cheeks whiten and my hands tremble, I can bear it, for you shall be the law by which I will abide. You shall be a law to yourself, my brave Sylvia. Put your hands in mine and hold fast to the friend who loves and honours you for this. I will tell you what Adam did and said. He sat in deep thought many minutes, but with him to see is to do, and soon he turned to me with the courageous expression which in him signifies the fight is fought, the victory won. It is necessary to be just, it is not necessary to be happy. I shall never marry Sylvia, even if I may. And with that paraphrase of words, whose meaning seemed to fit his need, he went away. I think he will not come again, either to me or you. How still the room grew as Faith's reluctant lips uttered the last words. Sylvia sat motionless, looking out into the sunny valley, with eyes that saw nothing but the image of that beloved friend leaving her perhaps forever. Well, she knew that with this man to see was to do, and with a woeful sense of desolation falling cold upon her heart, she felt that there was nothing more to hope for but a brave submission like his own. Yet in that pause there came a feeling of relief after the first despair. The power of choice was no longer left her, and the help she needed was bestowed by one who could decide against himself, inspired by a sentiment which curbed a strong man's love of power, and made it subject to a just man's love of right. Great examples never lose their virtue. What Pompey was to Warwick, that Warwick became to Sylvia, and in the moment of supremest sorrow she felt the fire of a noble emulation kindling within her from the spark he left behind. Faith, what comes next? This. And she was gathered close while Faith confessed how hard her task had been, by letting tears fall fast upon the head which seemed to have found its proper resting place, as if despite her courage and her wisdom the woman's heart was half broken with its pity. Better than any words was the motherly embrace, the silent shower, the blessed balm of sympathy which soothed the wounds it could not heal. Leaning against each other, the two hearts talked together in the silence, feeling the beauty of the tie kind nature weaves between the hearts that should be knit. Faith often turned her lips to Sylvia's forehead, brushed back her hair with a lingering touch, and drew her nearer, as if it was very pleasant to see and feel the little creature in her arms. Sylvia lay there, tearless and tranquil, thinking thoughts for which she had no words, and trying to prepare herself for the life to come, a life that now looked very desolate. Her eye still rested on the valley where the river flowed. The elms waved their budding boughs in the bland air, and the meadows wore their earliest tinge of green. But she was not conscious of these things till the sight of a solitary figure coming slowly up the hill recalled her to the present, and the duties it still held for her. Here is Geoffrey! How wearily he walks! How changed and old he looks! Oh, why was I born to be a curse to all who love me? Hush, Sylvia, say anything but that, because it casts reproach upon your father. Your life is but just begun. Make it a blessing, not a curse, as all of us have power to do, and remember that for every affliction there are two helpers who can heal or end the heaviest we know, time and death. The first we may invoke and wait for, the last God alone can send when it is better not to live. I will try to be patient. Will you meet and tell Geoffrey what has passed? I have no strength left but for passive endurance. Faith went, Sylvia heard the murmur of earnest conversation, then steps came rapidly along the hall, and Moore was in the room. She rose involuntarily, but for a moment neither spoke, for never had they met as now. Each regarded the other as if a year had rolled between them since they parted, and each saw in the other the changes that one day had wrought. Neither the fire of resentment nor the frost of pride now rendered Moore's face stormy or stern. Anxious and worn it was, with newly graven lines upon the forehead and melancholy curves about the mouth, but the peace of a conquered spirit touched it with a pale serenity, and some perennial hope shone in the glance he bent upon his wife. For the first time in her life Sylvia was truly beautiful, not physically, for never had she looked more weak and wan, but spiritually, as the inward change made itself manifest in an indescribable expression of meekness and of strength. With suffering came submission, with repentance came regeneration, and the power of the woman yet to be touched with beauty the pathos of the woman now passing through the fire. "Faith has told you what passed between us, and you know that my loss is a double one," she said. "Let me add that I deserve it, that I clearly see my mistakes, will amend such as I can, bear the consequence of such as are past help, try to profit by all, and make no new ones. I cannot be your wife, I ought not to be Adam's, but I may be myself, may live my life alone, and being friends with both, wrong neither. This is my decision. In it I believe, by it I will abide, and if it be a just one, God will not let me fail." "I submit, Sylvia. I can still hope and wait." So humbly he said it, so heartily he meant it, she felt that his love was as indomitable as Warwick's will, and the wish that it were right and possible to accept and reward it woke with all its old intensity. It was not possible, and though her heart grew heavier within her, Sylvia answered steadily, "No, Geoffrey, do not hope, do not wait, forgive me and forget me. Go abroad as you proposed, travel far and stay long away, change your life, and learn to see in me only the friend I once was, and still desire to be." "I will go, will stay till you recall me, but while you live your life alone I shall still hope and wait." This invincible fidelity, so patient, so persistent, impressed the listener like a prophecy, disturbed her conviction, arrested the words upon her lips, and softened them. "It is not for one so unstable as myself to say, 'I shall never change.' I do not say it, though I heartily believe it, but will leave all to time. Surely I may do this, may let separation gently, gradually convince you or alter me, and as the one return which I can make for all you have given me, let this tie between us remain unbroken for a little longer. Take this poor consolation with you. It is the best I can offer now. Mine is the knowledge that however I may thwart your life in this world, there is a beautiful eternity in which you will forget me and be happy." She gave him comfort, but he robbed her of her own as he drew her to him, answering with a glance brighter than any smile. "Love is immortal, dear, and even in the beautiful eternity I shall still hope and wait." How soon it was all over, the return to separate homes, the disclosures and the storms, the preparations for the solitary voyage, the last charges and farewells. Mark would not, and Prue could not, go to see the traveller off, the former being too angry to lend his countenance to what he termed a barbarous banishment, the latter, being half blind with crying, stayed to nurse Jessie, whose soft heart was nearly broken at what seemed to her the most direful affliction under heaven. But Sylvia and her father followed Moore till his foot left the soil, and still lingered on the wharf to watch the steamer out of port. An uncongenial place in which to part. Carriages rolled up and down, a clamour of voices filled the air, the little steam tug snorted with impatience, and the waves flowed seaward with the ebbing of the tide. But father and daughter saw only one object, heard only one sound, Moore's face as it looked down upon them from the deck, Moore's voice as he sent cheery messages to those left behind. Mr. Yule was endeavouring to reply as cheerily, and Sylvia was gazing with eyes that saw very dimly through their tears, when both were aware of an instantaneous change in the countenance they watched. Something beyond themselves seemed to arrest Moore's eye. A moment he stood intent and motionless, then flushed to the forehead with the dark glow Sylvia remembered well, waved his hand to them, and vanished down the cabin stairs. "Papa, what did he see?" There was no need of any answer. Adam Warwick came striding through the crowd, saw them, paused with both hands out, and a questioning glance as if uncertain of his greeting. With one impulse the hands were taken. Sylvia could not speak. Her father could, and did approvingly. "Come, Warwick, you are come to say good-bye to Geoffrey." "Rather to you, sir. He needs none. I go with him." "With him?" echoed both hearers. "Ay, that I will. Did you think I would let him go away alone, feeling bereaved of wife and home and friend? We should have known you better. But Warwick, he will shun you. He hid himself just now as you approached. He has tried to forgive, but he cannot so soon forget. All the more need of my helping him to do both. He cannot shun me long, with no hiding place to fly to but the sea, and I will so gently constrain him by the old-time love we bore each other, that he must relent and take me back into his heart again." "Oh, Adam, go with him, stay with him, and bring him safely back to me when time has helped us all." "I shall do it, God willing." Unmindful of all else, Warwick bent and took her to him as he gave the promise, seemed to put his whole heart into a single kiss, and left her trembling with the stress of his farewell. She saw him cleave his way through the throng, leap the space left by the gangway just withdrawn, and vanish in search of that lost friend. Then she turned her face to her father's shoulder, conscious of nothing but the fact that Warwick had come and gone. A cannon boomed, the crowd cheered, the last cable was flung off, and the steamer glided from her moorings with the surge of water and the waft of wind like some sea monster eager to be out upon the ocean free again. "Look up, Sylvia. She will soon pass from sight." "Are they there?" "No." "Then I do not care to see. Look for me, father, and tell me when they come."
"They will not come, dear. Both have said good-bye, and we have seen the last of them for many a long day."
"They will come. Adam will bring Geoffrey to show me they are friends again. I know it. You shall see it. Lift me to that block and watch the deck with me, that we may see them the instant they appear." Up she sprang, eyes clear now, nerves steady, faith strong. Leaning forward, so utterly forgetful of herself, she would have fallen into the green water tumbling there below, had not her father held her fast. How slowly the minutes seemed to pass, how rapidly the steamer seemed to glide away, how heavily the sense of loss weighed on her heart as wave after wave rolled between her and her heart's desire.
"Come down, Sylvia. It is giving yourself useless pain to watch and wait. Come home, my child, and let us comfort one another."
She did not hear him, for as he spoke the steamer swung slowly round to launch itself into the open bay, and with a cry that drew many eyes upon the young figure with its face of pale expectancy, Sylvia saw her hope fulfilled. "I knew they would come. See, father, see! Geoffrey is smiling as he waves his handkerchief, and Adam's hand is on his shoulder. Answer them, oh, answer them, I can only look." The old man did answer them enthusiastically, and Sylvia stretched her arms across the widening space, as if to bring them back again. Side by side the friends stood now, Moore's eye upon his wife, while from his hand the little flag of peace streamed in the wind. But Warwick's glance was turned upon his friend, and Warwick's hand already seemed to claim the charge he had accepted. Standing thus, they passed from sight, never to come sailing home together, as the woman on the shore was praying God to let her see them come. End of chapter 18. Recording by Jenny Wildman.